Hello, and welcome to the Dean's Lunchtime Chat on Sustaining Faculty Excellence. I'm Allison Werder, and I'm just going to start us off with a couple housekeeping issues before I turn it over to Dean Massey to begin. First, the session is being recorded so we can view it at a future time. By joining us today, you are consenting to be part of this video. Second, we will be using the Q&A function located at the bottom of the screen. If you do have questions throughout the course of this conversation, please feel free to submit them down below, and we will be moderating this and try and get to all of the questions and answer them in the course of this conversation as time permits. Secondly, participants' cameras, microphones, and chat functions will not be enabled during this conversation. So we do encourage you, if you have conversations you want to submit, to do it through the Q&A function. So that is our housekeeping issues for today. I'm going to turn it over. Thanks for joining, and turn it over to Anne to begin the session.
Thanks, Allison. Well, welcome everyone, and to the fourth of our 5 lunchtime chats. This is really exciting for us to come together as we have over the last several months. Each one of our chats has been focusing on one of Eisenberg's 5 key priorities that we are really looking at, and the underlying initiatives that we currently have in place, along with those that we're starting to think about as we look to the future. So it's really exciting for us to all be here again with you. And thanks for taking your time during the day to join us. In January, just a quick reminder for those of you who may or may not have been able to be with us. In January, we talked about enabling career success and had a really wonderful conversation with Assistant Dean Holly Lawrence about the work of the Office of Career Success. In February, we talked about various initiatives that support our priority of creating global citizens and inclusive leaders. And we had Melvin Rodriguez and Elena McCauley and a couple of our students involved in that discussion, which was a lot of fun. And last month, we had a great talk about inspiring innovation in teaching and learning. And in case you missed that one of our guests was Gregory Thomas, the Executive Director of the Berthium Center for Entrepreneurship. And he showed us a very fun demo of a 3D platform, Verbella, that supports collaborative work, and they're going to be using in the context of the center and work with students. So we'll have more about that as things unfold. Very exciting work. In addition, we had last month 2 of our Eisenberg teaching fellows, Pam Stratford and Shirley Smerling, and they talked about their efforts along with the other 3 fellows to advance teaching and learning over this last year, particularly as everything was done remote and online. So that was a very fun conversation. And that effort, of course, will continue into the new year as we return to campus and return to in-person teaching and learning, along with our ongoing online efforts. So lots of really good work going around. All of those chats are available via video. And so if you're interested and you didn't get a link to those earlier, we can share those in the chat box. Let us leave a note in the chat box and we will get your email address and send along a link. But today is a very fun topic, that I'm particularly excited to be talking about, and that is our key priority of sustaining faculty excellence. As you may or may not know, the foundation of any great business school is its faculty, and we consider our faculty to be one of our greatest assets. And so our goal when we talk about sustaining faculty excellence is really twofold: to attract and to retain those faculty that contribute in so many ways to the school. Our research faculty, their research contributes to theory and to business practice. Our faculty are committed and innovative instructors with students at all levels: undergrad, graduate, master's, online, on the ground, doctoral students. And our faculty, frankly, are good colleagues. They are ready to lend service wherever and whenever needed. That's both within Eisenberg, their home departments, campus, and to their profession more broadly. Many of our faculty serve on editorial boards or as editors, which is a very time-consuming but important role that we play externally. That's just but one example. As I like to say, our faculty fire on all cylinders: research, teaching, and service, all cylinders. And I'm so proud of them. And I'm so proud of those faculty over this last year of leaning into the efforts that we had to put in place, working remotely, And it's just been phenomenal. So I can't say enough. You've heard me talk about this before, and you'll hear me go on about this in many other contexts. So I'm really pleased today to that we have three key faculty joining us today who are going to share their experiences and thoughts about sustaining faculty excellence, particularly from a research perspective. But first, let me introduce Assistant Dean and CMO Allison Werder, who kicked us off here. And she's going to, just to remind us all, she's going to help us a little bit later. She's going to return and manage some of the Q&A questions that have come in advance of the session, and any of those that emerge as we kind of go forward. So Allison, thank you for doing this once again. She's been a great partner in this. So let me turn to just a quick introductions here. I think two of my colleagues here, Liz Miller and David Tyler, they may have learned their lesson this past week. They dropped into my open office hours and chatted with me. And then immediately I said, I'm going to invite them to the lunchtime chat. So I hope that doesn't deter them from joining me in office hours again. But the conversations were so exciting and really a lot of fun. I thought they would be wonderful. And Dave Piercy here. Dave is just a good colleague all around as a department chair. But let me introduce them. Liz Miller is from our marketing department. She is the incoming chair for the marketing department. So congratulations to Liz on that. She is also the PhD coordinator and a full professor in the department. Liz has been with Eisenberg for around 10 years. She couldn't remember, so that's a good sign that things have gone well. Liz is going to be talking to us in a moment about some recent pandemic COVID-related research she and some of her colleagues have been engaged in over the last several months. So that shows relevance to current events and activities. We have David Tyler as associate professor in our sport management department. Dave came and visited me last week and showed me something that I was quite intrigued with, and he's going to share it with us today too. As part of research lab work within the McCormick Department of Sport Management called No Rivalry. So we'll hear more about that. I think many of our alums will be excited to hear and see some of this. Dave has just completed his first year with us, although he did his graduate work at Eisenberg. So we are absolutely thrilled to have him back in the fold and a key member of the sport management department. And last but not least, Dave Piercy. Many of our alums know Dave. Dave is our accounting department chair, and he is the John F. Kennedy Endowed Professor in Accounting. Dave holds one of the key endowed professor titles within the school based on his research and his contributions, well deserved. And Dave and I are going to talk a bit about Eisenberg's investments a little bit more broadly and how the support of faculty in sustaining excellence has really driven the accounting department forward, but certainly applies to all our departments as well. So thanks to everybody, our audience and the key faculty. I could have invited so many more faculty. We would have been in a huge onslaught. We'd need the whole afternoon. So anyway, thanks all of you for taking time over lunch. So let me start with Liz, and I'm going to start with Liz partially because Liz is also going to be exiting us early because she's actually teaching this afternoon. So it's not that she wants to just take off, but she actually is going to play that other important role as a faculty member in the school. So Liz, if you could you just describe for us as a marketing professor kind of your general stream or streams of research that you're engaged in?
Yeah, so in the most broad sense, my research is concerned with consumer behavior and consumer decision-making. Getting a little more specific, a lot of my research has been concerned with how do we encourage consumers to make better or healthier decisions, and even sort of going more narrow than that. Most of my research, it looks at how affect or emotions change the way that consumers process information.
Well, I think certainly all of us as consumers can appreciate the work that Liz, and so you can see the relevance to business practice. Liz, we got talking about kind of your current COVID-related project. I think last fall we initialized some conversations around that. You want to kind of explain to our audience what you and your colleagues are doing in that space?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, talking about in terms of emotions, I mean, with the pandemic hitting, there's all kinds of emotions. And so it started me thinking about questions that we could look at. And I reached out to Matt Godfrey, who is another faculty in the marketing department. We started talking, and our ideas started coalescing around this idea of trying to understand the experience of mask wearing in order so that we could encourage people, more people to wear masks. And also we wanted to provide insights that retailers, governments, and social providers could use to respond to the social and emotional impact of masks. And then also so they could better serve customers in terms of maintaining customer relationships and helping customers feel safe, safe using their services. And so we started out by exploring how mask wearing impacts perceptions of social closeness and distance. We thought that when someone had a mask on, that it might cause people to feel like they were further apart, right? Both socially and, in a physical sense, but also in like an emotional sense. And so we designed an experiment to test that. And the data didn't really support that particular hypothesis, but it did show us. Yeah, that happens. Research is a process. But it did show that there were we also included a lot of questions about the perceptions that people had of the people wearing masks or not wearing masks, and we also had open-ended questions. And from looking at all that data and looking at things, we started to realize that norms were a really important part of this, right? And so norms, norms really seem to be playing a role in the mask wearing. And so we shifted our research to start thinking about, trying to explore these norms and how do they develop. And so Matt's actually, my background is in psychology and as an experimentalist, but Matt's background is in sociology and qualitative research. And so we've moved the research right now we're starting to do interviews with people to try and understand their experience of mask wearing. And we're trying to interview a really broad range from all across the country and from places that have mask mandates and places that don't have mask mandates, and also different sides of the political spectrum.
As you know, and everybody's following the news and across the country that, the different states have different relaxing mask mandates, ending them, and so on. So, and this is creating quite a challenge for retailers, as you're kind of talking about here. Do you have any insights that you might think about from a practical application perspective, what you might be able to say to some of our partners in the retail industry?
I mean, that is our ultimate goal. I mean, we want to be able to provide insights in terms of talking about like what are the motivations that lead people to wear masks, and how can we create comfort and make people feel safe, and then also what gets people, motivates people to wear masks. We're still kind of at an early point. We're just starting that qualitative. We have some of the open-ended data from the initial experiment that we ran, but we haven't fully dug into it and analyzed it. But yeah, we did run a quick survey to help us identify people to interview, and I mean, and those results are kind of on the obvious side at the moment, right? So people who believe that in the science that there's scientific evidence that masks are good, they're more likely to wear masks, right? People for whom it's become an automatic process are more likely to wear masks. People who feel like it depends on the situation, they're less likely to wear masks, right? People who feel like it's easy or comfortable, like they're more likely to wear masks. If you think about how difficult it is to breathe, or that you're just like, some people are just like fed up of wearing masks, like those kinds of things are leading people to be less likely to wear masks, right? And so right now we're just sort of have those broad things. We haven't really had a chance to do. We're just starting the interviews. Actually, I think the interviews are starting either this week or next week, and Matt's doing those interviews, and we also have a doctoral student and an undergraduate student are helping carry out those interviews.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Liz, because one of the questions I know had come in, I think from a parent, and Dave, both Daves can speak to this. So how do you engage students in your research? Doctoral students are kind of obvious because that's why they're here. We're trying to develop them as academic researchers. But what about masters and undergraduate students? How do you get them involved?
Yeah, well, so undergraduate students, I mean, this particular project has been really, good for that, right? Because I taught consumer behavior in the fall, and and also actually in the spring too. And then consumer behavior was just changing like the whole time I was teaching that course. Like consumer behavior has massively changed in response to COVID. And so we were able, I was able to bring that, and we had a lot of conversations in class. And I even had students, in my class talk about, what caused them to wear masks, or what didn't they cause them to wear masks, in terms of trying to test out and think about some of these ideas. And Matt's been teaching a course on customer insights. And so he had students in terms of because one of the things he teaches is about doing interviews. And so he had students actually carry out interviews with people in terms of their mask wearing and what was causing them to do masks. And then, so there's that, and that teaching research sort of play off. But then in terms of like getting involved, like, so the student who's doing, helping out with the interviews, I think she was in Matt's class, and she was like really engaged in the topic. And so I think he invited her to participate more formally in it. There are also honor students who, look for research projects. And so they'll come and, they'll ask for, to get involved in research. And so they can do that as well.
Well, Liz, I think that as you talk about your research and the notion of the intersection between our research and our teaching, you bring, as you just described, a lot of your research into the classroom around consumer behavior, advertising, and then we start to think about how to, particularly as students become more interested, offering new courses in certain areas and the like. But there was an interesting project, before I let you go and teach, there was an interesting project that you shared with me last week that you were doing with students in your, I believe it was a marketing advertising class. So you want to talk a little bit about, because it's very impactful, and it's learning, how to do things, but there's an impact here that I thought was particularly compelling.
Yeah, so this is my advertising practicum class. Do you want me to share my screen?
That'd be fantastic. I was very impressed.
So in my advertising practicum class, we work with a real world client. We're actually working with Adventure Partners, which is a company that matches schools with companies in these in national competitions. And our client is actually the Department of Homeland Security. We're working with the McCain Institute and I always get this wrong. It's the Office of Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention, I think is the acronym. And the students, in terms of trying to tackle the issue of how do we, reduce, domestic terrorism, we decided to tackle the issue of misinformation and the spread of misinformation online. And so the students have developed an entire curriculum. So this is the homepage for the website, and they have an entire curriculum that they've developed. But there's 5 days of lessons that include videos and assignments, and we're working with a teacher at Frontier High School in South Deerfield, who's his students in 2 of his classes are participating in the curriculum, and we're hoping it's going to make an impact. And if you guys want to check it out, it's the thinkcampaign.org is the homepage, and we also have an Instagram account. It's the.think.campaign. And today, actually, in class right before coming here, I taught that class, and we're trying to ramp up some additional social media channels. So there may be additional social media channels being added, but for the moment, we have the website is here with all the some really great videos. Actually, the students have done a really great job in terms of putting together material. In terms of there's full instructor guides. There's these great videos that talk about, this one talks about definitions of things around misinformation, and there's also ones that talk about open-mindedness. So we're really trying to think about building critical thinking skills and open-mindedness. So
that's really phenomenal. I was so impressed with that, and I think it does illustrate the intersection of our research and our teaching and impact. And so, Liz, thank you so much for sharing. We look forward to hearing more about your COVID results and more work with the students, and this being but one example. So I will let you go.
That's good. I'll hang out for a little bit, but thank you.
I do want to comment again, and Jenna emphasize to our audience, this is Liz's work, and we'll hear about David and Dave Piercy's, is just one example of how the work of our faculty really gained some media attention. So when the work in COVID or the Think project with the students, many of you may be familiar, for example, and she's gotten a lot of attention over the last several months, Anna Nagurney's work in supply chain management and the comments and the interviews that she has done on the problems with supply chain, COVID supply, and just product supply, that is, we're having trouble with shipping and the like. Another faculty member I just mentioned here, Melissa Baker from HTM department, just published an article that was very relevant on educational distancing, a study of student perceptions in the time of COVID that deals with remote education and online education. So our faculty are very much engaged in current issues and current topics, along with contributions to theory as well as practice. And so I just wanted to mention that before I turn to Dave Tyler and his very interesting research. Dave, you joined Eisenberg last fall, coming back to us after being away for a bit of time. What brought you back? Before we turn to your research, why did you come back? I mean, it may not have been the weather in January that brought you back.
I was living the last decade or so in Asheville, North Carolina, with beautiful place, beautiful weather, quite happy there. But there's something about Eisenberg, and really what it was is the colleagues here and the students. I mean, when I came for the interview, it permeated this desire to be better and to be the best, not in a competitive way. It was just everybody wanted to help each other out. Hey, let's improve together. And that was really intoxicating to be around that and invigorating. And also just the research support provided by Eisenberg and by the McCormick department. I love doing the research, and Eisenberg has this commitment to using research within the classroom and to connect to industry. And the support that I've been provided, as you mentioned, I haven't even been here a year, and we've already established a research lab, overhauled our database architecture, launched a new website. I mean, none of these things would have been possible without Eisenberg being behind that. So I'm really grateful to that.
That's wonderful. Dave, can you describe for all of us kind of your general research streams and focus, and then we'll talk about the specific project that was quite intriguing.
Sure. My main area of focus is sport rivalry, so rival fans. But really that's about fan identification within larger fan communities, ideas of in-groups and out-groups. And while I'm looking at it as within a sport context, it's really a broader marketing or social psychology concept where we look at how people identify with groups and how that consumption of a product, in this case, a sport product, can affect them in other ways.
And I think you can see some of the links for our audience to the work, like, for example, Liz does. I mean, it's in some ways it's a sports audience, but it's still consumer, it's behavioral, it's social. So what is the project that you're working on, right? Well, the No Rivalry project. Why don't you describe that for us?
Sure.
That was, he showed this to me. That's how he.
Yeah. So the main thing, as I said, we do is rivalry. I say we as my colleague Joe Cobbs, who was a PhD student here with me. As you alluded to, Dean Massey, I'm a triple alumnus, MBA, master's, and PhD, all here. Joe was with me with the PhD, and we've been working ever since on this rivalry project. And one of the things, we look at a lot of different ways, but one of the things we do is ask fans, all right, you've got 100 rivalry points that you can allocate to rivals of your favorite team. And how do you allocate those points? And seeing how fans choose to allocate those points and weight the different rivals has been really interesting and has helped improve things like demand estimation. So you want to estimate, how many people are going to watch a game or buy tickets, or how to generate. This is one of those factors that can go in there. And so because it has such applicability to other researchers and to practitioners, and also just to people arguing over bar fights, we put it all as a website. And so if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen now so you can see this. And this is a website that we have where you can go and you can look up what those rivals are. So you see my screen right now, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the website. You can click through here on your own. It's just norivalry.com. But I'll highlight
too, right, Dave? I mean, you've got teams like the soccer teams and things in Europe, and so it's pretty comprehensive.
correct. Yeah, right now we have data for six leagues domestically, plus the Indian Premier League. And then we are collecting data from, right now that shows another 20 leagues or so. We have another 20 that we'll start collecting from as soon as I get around to it the next couple of days. So with this 100-point measure, if we look at something like the New York Jets page here, you can see that the New York Jets fans allocate about 62 of their points to the Patriots, about 20 to the Dolphins, and about 10 to the Bills. So that's the way of looking at this, is relative weight of how they view their rivals. And then we measure other things. You can see charts there of how many points they give to the Patriots versus how many points the Patriots give to them. And then we measure other things like prejudice. How do they feel toward Patriots fans? Discrimination, schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is just how much joy they feel like when bad things happen to the Patriots. And so we do all these measurements. And then we can also look at it at the league level. So for example, here's Major League Baseball, where you can see we have the top 10 list of most intense rivalries. So these are the rivalries where fans give the most points to the other fan base. And number one was, and this is not regional bias here, this is the data. Number one was the Red Sox and the Yankees, where they were the most focused in Major League Baseball in terms of giving the most points to the other. And then we also see things like Giants, Dodgers, and Cards, Cubs, or Cubs, Cardinals. Then on the flip side is the unbalanced rivalry, where one side cares a lot more than the other.
Well, and we talked when we chatted about this, that some of these intense rivalries are persistent over time, like the Red Sox and the Yankees, and others evolve over time, right? They change over time. Mm-hmm. They're not as sticky, I guess, is a way to put it. Is that right?
Yeah, right. And we are still figuring all that out. We've been collecting data since about 2013-ish. And as we continue to collect data, we're going to be able to look at this longitudinally and see how rivalries change based on other factors that are going on there. Some of our early work was looking at the antecedents or elements that make a rivalry, and we can see how those influence and change rivalries over time, and so how consumers respond to that.
Well, that is very cool. Now, do you engage students, as like Liz did? Do you engage students in your work as well? You want to describe that for us?
Sure, right. And that was another big thing with coming here, is the opportunity to do that. One is working with doctoral students, certainly, but even more so, it's getting opportunities to bring this into the classroom, which we've been doing already, but we can do more now, where we bring student projects where they learn to work with data. We've got all this data for them to work with. So I teach data analytics. So this is students who can work with that data, where no matter what career they're going to go into, they're going to be able to take the skills they learn of manipulating data and pivot tables and Excel functions, all these different things that they can then apply to their own careers. And also applied marketing, the topics like fan identification or building sponsorship assets. These are things that we talk about in marketing, but here students can actually see how it's going to work. And then getting students involved with the research process itself. So we have students who are going to work in the lab or do independent studies with the No Rivalry Lab once we're back in person. Did a little bit this term, but it's going to be much more next year. And we've had undergraduates who have authored peer-reviewed publications. So these are undergraduates who graduate with a peer-reviewed publication already to their name, or students who are working in the lab and maybe they're not so into the research side of it, but there's things that need to be done in the lab, from operations, from social media strategy, from working with Adobe Illustrator to modify files. So there's all these applied skills that students get to actually work with in that lab setting, thanks to everything that's going on to support the research.
was phenomenal. As everyone knows, I mean, the McCormick department is a real point of pride in the school, and the support of the McCormick family for the department has really helped a lot of the efforts, Dave's efforts, and many, many other folks, both faculty, staff, and the students in the department. So Dave, thank you. Dave and I explored a rivalry that I was interested in, but I won't share what that was. It's to keep the peace in the household. Thanks, Dave. And Allison shared with everyone a link to the article on the website about this work, and I encourage folks to go have some fun with it, because it really is a great effort, and we're looking forward to hear more about this. So Dave Piercy, last but not least, thank you for joining us this afternoon as well. As I mentioned earlier, Dave is a chair of our accounting department. He holds a John F. Kennedy Endowed Chair based on his research accomplishments and contributions. So one of our key endowed professorships. What some of you may not know, or most of our audience may not know, is that the accounting department has a notable status of being AACSB accredited. That is a special accreditation above and beyond the School of Business accreditation by AACSB. And it's for real special accounting departments, quite frankly. And we just successfully were reaccredited last month as a school and the accounting department. And we got debriefed at the end of the accreditation visit by the review team. And the accolades for Dave and for the accounting department were unbelievable. Again, a real point of pride, and much of that I'm going to attribute to Dave's leadership over these years. In addition to the accreditation, I just want to point out that, Dave, you've got 2 faculty members who serve as fellows for the U.S. Public Accounting Oversight Board, which is quite an accomplishment, which was created through Sarbanes-Oxley to protect investors, like all of us, through its oversight of audits of public issuers of securities. So we've got some real key players within the department. But let's turn, Dave, I'd like to talk a little bit about, in your role in particular, both as a faculty member and then as the department chair. And, besides adding to the department's bragging sheet, and we've got lots of wonderful things to say about accounting. By the way, folks, if you don't know it, this accounting department is one of the best in the country, bar none, in terms of its research and impact and the recognition of its faculty. What, Dave, would you say, as we think about sustaining faculty excellence, what do you think about? What are some of the challenges? What are the things that we do within the school or in the department that really have helped the department move along, both in terms of attracting and retaining our faculty? So I do want Dave to talk about it because he's been so successful at it.
Oh, well, thanks, Anne. So the things that the school has done that has been successful is, helped us be successful is really support faculty research. The faculty are kind of the raw materials of the product that we deliver to the student. And so it's really critical for us in our mission that we are able to deliver a world-class product and world-class faculty to our students. We're in kind of a unique spot as the University of Massachusetts Amherst. On one hand, we are a state university, so part of our charter is to provide an accessible education to the citizens of the Commonwealth. On the other hand, among the state universities here, we are the only Research One university, and so we need to deliver a world-class education and make it accessible to the students of the Commonwealth. And so for us to have a faculty with a national reputation helps our students, it helps our connections with the firms who hire our students, and the school has helped us build a really tremendous faculty, and this is true for the school overall, but it's a challenge in the marketplace because it's a competitive marketplace, but the school has been very helpful in supporting the faculty with research. Dave Tyler mentioned the behavioral lab. The school has very much placed an emphasis on helping faculty grow into their careers and help support their reputation, even as Eisenberg's reputation has grown a lot over the last several years.
Dave, could you, there's a question that I think is relevant, this experience of how we encourage our young faculty in giving them direction in their careers. You have some comments, because I know your department and others do a wonderful job of mentoring our junior faculty, especially in their first 3 years. I want to just talk a little bit about that process of how we, and I will say, when we hire faculty, we are hiring them with the expectation they will be successful. And so, how do we help them achieve that expectation?
All right. Well, we've done a couple of things. Number one, we've been extremely careful with who we have hired. In speaking about our department, we've had, and a lot of our alumni know this, we had a lot of retirements over the past 10 years. And we've hired a lot of young faculty. Because of Eisenberg's growing reputation, we've been able to get candidates as faculty from the very best doctoral programs nationwide, but we've been really, really selective to find people who would be team players, who would be very, I call it the competence to arrogance ratio, people who were still down to earth and realize that teaching is critically important, research is important, service and building the institution is important. So we've done a really good job of selecting really great people to begin with. And then as within the department, we provide both formal and informal feedback to our faculty as their career unfolds. We do have all the formal channels that one might expect, with providing them with performance evaluations and annual reviews and those sorts of things. But we also have a culture of just a very open door policy. We're all friends. That aspect of Eisenberg permeates also with the faculty-student relationship as well. We're a big business school that feels very much like a small and intimate business school. So I know our junior faculty very, very, very well, and am talking with them all the time about what is going on with them, how their career is unfolding, any concerns they have open access to me at any time they like.
Yeah, we have, our annual review process and feedback to those faculty all the way through the promotion, their third year review, which is a substantive review, and then as they move towards promotion to associate professor and beyond. So I think that the mentoring role is really important. Hey, Dave, can you speak more personally? You very deservedly hold an endowed title as a John F. Kennedy endowed professor. Can you speak to how that title, that endowed position, has really helped you personally in your efforts on your research and support with work with doctoral students and the like? So I think that's would be great for our audience to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my case, that professorship and the funds from that professorship have helped support me in my research agenda and my research agenda with doctoral students. We've been working on projects that that are shaping practice and having an impact on practice. Our research has been cited by the PCAOB, by the SEC, by other important players. And other faculty members too, who get similar types of support, fellowships or professorships in the school. I know it's had similar types of impact on their research and their ability to fund research and research that they're working on doctoral students with. In addition, the John F. Kennedy Endowed Professorship, sort of one aspect where it's affected me and helped me is that as a faculty member who holds this, I actually feel a great deal of accountability to the benefactor of the professorship, John Kennedy. I'm in contact with him fairly regularly and try to let him know what is going on here, help him know that he is getting a return on investment on his gift and investment in the Eisenberg School of Management and our accounting programs. John himself is a product of the state university system. And so he is very aware of the role that we play. We're teaching, not kids who go to private universities that are twice as expensive as ours, but we're teaching students who come from working class backgrounds, many of them first generation college students. And our goal is to deliver them a world-class education that competes with all of those private universities that cost twice as much, and the major public universities that have endowments that dwarf ours. And so I as department chair of the accounting department, I feel actually a great responsibility to John to let him know exactly what we are doing and to think strategically about what we are doing as a department, to let him know that we're impacting the lives of students for good, which was really ultimately the intention behind John's gift.
That's wonderful. Dave, can you speak, because I know, as I said earlier, accounting department is nationally, internationally recognized as one of the best in the country. And that trickles down into your doctoral program. And of course, we have the Eisenberg doctoral program, and we are producing or training these students, these doctoral students, to be academic researchers and excellent instructors wherever they ultimately place. And so the support of the school and our alumni, the support of the doctoral program is really important. Can you speak to that a little bit about how the doctoral program, why that is so important to the accounting department?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really,
the doctoral students keep the accounting faculty fresh. So we are, as accounting faculty, we really do try to stay abreast of the current issues. Most of our students, the vast majority of them, go into financial statement auditing, and our faculty is known as one of the top 10, top 5, even depending on the ranking, faculties in financial statement auditing nationwide. But as we age, we get more firmly ensconced in the ivory tower and farther from practice. And the doctoral students bring us an annual supply of talent, of hungry researchers and teachers who in the immediate term benefit our students by teaching in the classroom and are able to engage with students in the classroom in a way that has an intersection of teaching and research, just like the faculty are. But the doctoral students are also coming to us with fresh ideas, challenging the faculty, bringing the latest research techniques, and really keeping us on our A game when it comes to our efforts to maintain current. The doctoral program helps us keep our national status as thought leaders in accounting and in financial statement auditing. And that we want to be excellent in everything we do, from the doctoral program to the master's program to the undergraduate program. And it kind of is like a rising tide lifts all boats. There is a cumulative effect of our growing national reputation that spills over to other things, including the hiring of our students by accounting firms.
I think what the doctoral program is sometimes a hidden program within business schools, and the reality of working with the current faculty on research projects, helping the school and teaching and learning, as you said, Dave, being innovative and bringing fresh blood. It also really advances our reputation when we place them at the peer or better schools. And that's, because now we're pushing our students, much like our graduating our undergrads or masters go into business practice, and we get more Eisenberg grads out there. We're doing that with our doctoral program as well. And it's difficult. It's challenging to, what I mentioned earlier, competing for the best faculty when we're hiring and trying to retain our faculty. Competing for the best prospective doctoral students is really challenging. For those of you who may not know this, our base stipend for a doctoral student is about $25,000 a year, which is not, that's not a lot. Many of them are a little bit older, may have families. And so we're competing against, Dave, I know you're always competing against other schools whose stipend and package just for the doctoral students is much more significant.
Yes, we managed to we admitted 2 doctoral students this year. One of them had a competing offer of $43,000 from the University of Florida. Yet we were still able to nab this student despite
That's right.
significant drop there.
Dave's a good salesman.
It doesn't always work out in our favor, though.
Right. But that's where our alumni help, like through the Dean's Excellence Fund, that I can add some things, if we can add some things to attract the students and help the faculty. So Dave, thank you. Allison, in the spirit of time, I'm going to turn it back to you. Everyone has done a great job of giving us a little bit of overview of the kinds of research and the impact that our faculty have, both in contributions to theory and to practice, and work with students at all levels. And I hope you come away from this brief conversation with 3 of our best as to why I am always so excited about the school and about our faculty. But Allison, I'll turn it to you. I think we had some questions that had come in.
Yep, sure, great. I mean, thanks for that great overview of both the research and obviously the teaching that everyone's doing. We had a couple questions come in advance, and we also had some questions come in during this active session, so we'll kind of balance the two. I was going to put the first question out there while we still have Liz on, I think a little bit, so I was going to read this one and see if we could capture her. This came in from Jimmy in the Q&A, and he said, the kind of work that Professor Miller is doing is very behavioral economics based, which is something very applicable to the real world business and needs to be taught more at business schools. Is there a plan to offer more courses in behavioral economics at Eisenberg?
I think it's a great question. We're actually in the marketing department, we're about to undergo a pretty deep review of our curriculum. And so I'll certainly, we'll think about whether we can do that. We do incorporate some of those pieces into our classes, I think already. And certainly, talking about our research and stuff, we bring in those ideas. And certainly at the doctoral level, we talk about choice architecture, which is related to that whole behavioral economics field. And there are some courses in the resource economics department that also address behavioral economics. I think possibly at the doctoral level. I'm not sure if at an undergrad level. And our doctoral students take some of those courses, but we should think about whether or not we can bring something like that in-house.
Yeah, and can I add, just using the accounting department as an example, behavioral accounting is actually the dominant expertise of all of our faculty. And and by behavioral accounting, I mean specifically the intersection of psychology, judgment, decision-making, economics, and accounting. And it really permeates the thinking of a lot of our faculty and the way that they approach teaching in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to move on to one of the questions we had submitted in advance. This question came from an alum, John Spinney. He said, besides money, which is always important, what are the other key reasons a faculty member stays or finds another place to teach?
Well, first off, John Spinney, thank you for all your support. John has funded some titled positions and has been supportive in so many ways. So we appreciate that. And it's a great question. I will let others jump in here. One of the things that I think has been my experience, and I think this is the experience I've had at Eisenberg, is, it's a real family. It's a collegial place to be. People are supportive of each other. They lean in. We've seen that over this last year. And, it's kind of, although we haven't been going down the hall lately, we've been kind of in Zoom, but where you walk down the hall and you're happy to see the other person coming, and you talk about research projects like we've done today. It's very exciting. You talk about teaching innovations, you talk about your dog, so I don't know, I'll let others jump in here, but like most of us, we want to be in a good environment and a supportive environment on many dimensions.
A new faculty member in particular is really thinking quite a bit about launching a successful career. And your market value is based on your ability to build a reputation for yourself beyond a regional, even a national scale as a scholar in your field. And so one of the really important things when faculty look at when choosing among competing job offers for a school or deciding whether to stay at a school or entertain a competing job offer, besides money, is will they be successful in that environment? And so there really is a critical cumulative effect of being able to attract and retain a talented faculty that is viewed as thought leaders in their discipline. And that makes faculty members say that this is the wagon, this is what I want to hitch my wagon to, this business school over here. And in addition to what Anne referred to, the really collegial and helpful environment as well. We're not just looking for the Rain Man, brilliant faculty members who don't work well with others. We want people who really want to be in a collaborative environment where everybody is helping each other. It really is what I said before, rising tide builds raises all boats.
So, and a question came in through the active Q&A here, kind of related to that, which I thought was interesting. This Robert Mahoney asked, is the Amherst location a plus or a minus for faculty recruitment and retention?
People they always talk about location, and having lived been at 4 or 5 different universities now, I personally like the Amherst location. If you think about it, it's not for everybody. Some people want to be in a major urban center. Some people want to be, in a different environment. So, we talk to prospective faculty, about the environment, but, Amherst is great. It's close to Boston, close to New York, close to an airport down at Bradley. So I don't think of it. Some people don't maybe want the weather, but we can't deal with that, but it's okay. So I don't think it's ever really worked to our disadvantage overall. My experience being here is what I've seen so far is people come and most people stay. And if you look at our faculty, they have been here for quite some time. And that's a real indicator. When you look at some places and you see lots of turnover, that's usually an indicator that there's some other problems, and we don't have that.
Yeah, let me, I'm sorry I keep talking, but let me just briefly add too. I think one of the things that keeps faculty here are our students. It might be that every business school says we have great students, but in the case of UMass Amherst, we really have this, we really have blue collar working class students who have a great work ethic, and that's a really great thing as a faculty member to say, well, maybe we can add a little bit of spit and polish and prepare them for business acumen in the business world. But you can't put in what God's left out, is a saying in sports, and we really do have just. I don't know if it's a cultural thing of the Northeast, but we really do have great, hardworking, working class kids, and it really is when you really see people and students who are working their way through school, who themselves may not have come from a very affluent background, but themselves are working through school, they get more committed, and that's really personally rewarding for faculty to be able to work closely with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. I'm going to pivot a little bit to a question that came in before this. I think this is probably to you, Anne. The question is, how does Eisenberg compare with other schools and colleges in our competitive set when it comes to named professorships?
I think, we've got some work to do. We are very appreciative of the support from our alumni with regard to the endowed professorships and endowed chairs that we have. But competitively, when you go and look at the other, and I'll talk about public schools, public business schools, some of the top, we are going to make an effort in that space, and the reason is, it is a way for us to retain and attract the top faculty, right? As Dave, and you heard Liz and Dave Tyler talk, our faculty, as I said, fire on all cylinders. They're great researchers, great teachers, great service. That makes them very attractive to other schools and very attractive to pick them off, to be quite frank. And so, for us to have in our back pocket some professorships or chairs that we can then use for retention offers, or to attract people that we want to pick off. We want to pick off the best too. That makes us competitive, right? And those things allow us to do the things that Dave Piercy and others were talking about. We can provide summer research monies. We can provide travel and research support. We can help doctoral students that then in turn help the faculty. So, when we're a little thinner than I'd like us to be in that space, but we're making the efforts in that space, and we're very supportive. We've had a number of our donors, for example, come together, where maybe 3 or 4 donors come together and they're able to endow a professorship, right? And the like. We started a new initiative this past year. It's a smaller initiative, but it's important for us to retain and to reward our high-performing junior faculty. And that is we call them fixed term faculty fellowships. And these are for our rising stars, our associate professors, our junior people, that maybe they're not quite ready for an endowed professorship, and we may not have one available, but this fixed term fellowship that we get an alum to support or a donor to support, is 3 to 5 years at an extra at $15,000 a year. That is some research money that faculty member can use, and they would have the title. Right, they have a title that they can put in their name, and you know, our donors, like the John F. Kennedy Endowed Professorship. We have the Haldeman Family Faculty Fellow as one example of one of our donors that stepped up this last year. All of that helps us. So when somebody goes to our website and they go trolling through and looking at our faculty and they start to see these titles and they're comparing it to other schools, it says something about us and our reputation. So it's important, and we'll keep working at it, and we appreciate the support of our donors in that regard.
Okay, I'm going to go to the Q&A now for a couple of questions that have come in while we've been talking. The first, and I would guess this is probably for David here, it came from David. Given the growth and interest in esports, does Eisenberg or McCormick have any thoughts on creating an esports major or minor?
So we don't have any plans for that at the moment. But I will say, speaking personally, yeah, I try to build my courses to prepare students with the skills and knowledge to go with in whichever direction they go. So if they want to go into esports, fine. If they want to go into traditional, fine. And if they want to go into any other industry as well. You know, a lot of people don't end up doing what they majored in college, right? I mean, I was a liberal arts major, so and here I am. So the ability to prepare the students with some of the things I talked about earlier, you know, data analysis skills, psychology, behavioral economics that came up, like some of these things that prepare them to go into those fields, allow them to pursue careers in those industries such as esports, if that's something that they wanted to do.
Good. Thanks, David.
Okay, and another question from Robert was, are there formal programs connecting Eisenberg with corporate Massachusetts? Seminars, guest lectures, anything? I mean, I'm thinking of the Conversation With. I mean, there's some of those series that we do.
We do extensive connections, both, you know, obviously with our recruiters and our Office of Career Success. We inaugurated, and there's been others before that, our Conversations With series, where we bring in C-suite speakers to meet with students. We have one coming up next week with the head of Cisco is coming in, Ed Shirley. We've had the head of Wayfair in the fall and the like. So we do a lot of that. We do that both at the school level and also within the departments. The departments bring in alumni and industry speakers for all sorts of different things. So we have, you know, really an array of things that really exposing the students, and many of our alumni offer and engage with us in that regard. It's very, very helpful. And we have our boards with each of our departments, so we get input to curricular activities along with research as well. So lots of good stuff.
Okay, well, I think I've worked through the questions we got in advance, and I don't see other questions in the Q&A. So I think my job here is done, and I want to turn it over to you to close us out.
Good. Well, first off, thanks, Allison, for your efforts, Dave Piercy, David Tyler, Liz Miller, who is now engaged in her class. I really want to thank everyone again for joining us and taking an hour with us today. I've had a lot of fun. I love talking about research and faculty. That's pretty easy for me to do. You know, our research, as you've heard, we're trying to make a difference, not only contributions to academic theory, but to business practice as well. I think we've got some good examples here. And you've also heard, you know, that does translate into our reputation as one of the top business schools in the country, both in the business industry, but also amongst our peers. And so that's really important. And the support that we get from our alumni and our friends, whether it's entitled professorships or things that we do, Dean's Excellence Fund that we then funnel back to the faculty, really moves us forward. So you'll be hearing more about some of our efforts in around this space. Be sure to join us next month for our May 27th lunchtime chat. And this one is going to be another fun one. And this is a priority of attracting exceptional students. And we'll be having some of our students coming in and talking about how they've been supported through scholarships and their experience at Eisenberg. For those of you who missed this, I love to talk about this. We had 2 students this past couple weeks that were named by Poets and Quants as top 100 undergraduate business students, 2 phenomenal students. So maybe we'll get one of them to join us next month. So I'm looking forward to that, and look for an email. Again, thanks to Dave, Allison, Dave, Tyler, and Les for your help and all our support. And thank you. Thanks, everybody.